All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show. This is the pre-show of the study group. Today we have the 221001 A+ Core 1 study group. Not the official title, thankfully. That's a long one. Hello, chat room. Let's pop out the chat room. There you go. Let's put it on this side of the screen so I can see you. Hi, everybody. Let's move this over so that I need to put some hotkeys so I can 3/4 this stuff or 2/3 it or something instead of moving everything around manually. That'll be the next thing that I do. 10 minutes before we get started. So if you're watching this in the replay and you'd like to skip over the part where you look at the back of my head, you can do that. I promise it'll be different on the study group. You'll be able to see me up front once we get started. It's not quite. I get emails from people saying I was going to watch, but it's just the back of your head. Like that was the pre-show. There's more to watch. You don't see this angle the whole time, I promise. Hi, everybody. Thanks for checking in. DC is here, South Africa, Phoenix, Arizona, Southern Cal, Miami, welcome. We've got San Diego, Arizona, Atlanta, New Zealand is here, welcome. Salt Lake, welcome. Good to have you here. There's all 221001 today. So we're doing all 221001 Q&A. On the study group. And then that's the first hour. In the second hour, we just open up the phone lines and you can talk about whatever you'd like for that. Oh, a lot of people checking in. I think everybody's maybe sitting at home wanting to watch this today. Germany, South Africa, Fort Lauderdale, Dubai, Israel, South Africa again, Jax, Ohio, welcome. Sand Springs, Oklahoma, welcome. Got Dallas, Texas, Wiley, Texas, Switzerland, not in Texas, Chicago, Memphis. Yeah, a lot of the testing centers are probably all shutting down for the next week or so. This is a great opportunity to study because they will open up again and you will be able to take all of this. How do you switch from third-person view to first-person view? That's a good question. I need a first-person view of my perspective because right now you just have this one. It's sort of the third-person view straight on. This is sort of the Diablo perspective from above at an angle for all of that. So I need to put a camera like right on my head and then you'd be able to see what I see. I'm not sure you want to see what I see from that perspective. LA is here. Abilene, Maryland is here. Welcome. Hello, Georgia. Hello, Colorado Springs. Kylene, welcome. Jamaica, welcome. A lot of Texas today. Well, thanks for checking in. So that's good. I know I should just get a hat. Get a hat. I'll put a GoPro on it. How would I feed the GoPro into this? Socrative room name is Professor Messer, all one word. You can find details about that at professormesser.com/live. I need to put a lower thirds on here, don't I? Okay, we are recording, so that's good. Recording here, that's good. Haven't done this in a while. It's been a few weeks. The schedule this month and the schedule next month is a little crazy. This month's schedule actually worked out pretty well because I had not planned to do all of my live streams this week and next week. But I just scheduled it that way because of other things that were going on in my life. So this week are 2 live streams. Next week are 2 live streams. I think it worked out pretty well for everybody. Website for the questions, professormesser.com/QA. All the details on where you can go. Where is this site? What is the room name? What are all those things? You will always be able to find it at professormesser.com/live. Hello, Portland. Hello, San Diego. Vegas is here. Virginia, Germany, Pittsburgh. Welcome. Montreal, there's the Canadians. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Now I can tell Mrs. Professor Messer the Canadians checked in since she's not a Canadian citizen, but her mother and father were Canadian. So there you go. Well, there's a whole story there. We can talk about it. Nova Scotia, Kentucky. She's a U.S. citizen. Hello, Laurel. MD. Thanks, Maryland, for being here. We've got plenty to go through today. Hello, Massachusetts. I suppose you're in mourning. Sorry about that. Bahamas is here. 5 minutes to go. Just got the note. So now we've got emails have gone out, tweets have gone out. LinkedIn's checked out. All of those things have gone out. Hello, Bangladesh. Welcome. Bahamas are here. Cincinnati, Illinois. Welcome. NYC, Cleveland, Ohio. Omio, Omayo. Welcome. Good to have you here. Lana's here. It is a crazy week for us here. I'm glad I've got these live streams to kind of keep my, I've got plenty to do. It's not like my life has changed much. I spend most of my time in this room with nobody around. So by default, I was antisocial before antisocial was cool, apparently. That's sort of how it works. You're not really antisocial, but obviously there's not much going on in this vicinity around me. When you make content for the internet, you are who I am talking with all of the time, and you're over the wire. So that's the way it goes. Hello, Atlanta, Michigan. Kylene again. Dominican Republic. DC, welcome. First study group. Good to have you here. Virginia Beach is here. Lebanon, thank you for being here. Michigan is here. Welcome. All. Want to say thank you for your study guides. Great. Passed the 1,002 this Saturday. Boy, he sneaked in there just before they shut everything down, I guess. And now you're A+ certified. Congratulations, Mr. Speed Gamer 29. Now Network Plus. Very good. Hello, Puerto Rico. Welcome. Good to have you here. We've got Ghana is here. We have Hungary, Michigan again. The UK, welcome. St. Pete, Florida. Maryland. Chantilly, welcome. There's, and good. And another person in the chat room, CXH6779, says, wanted to say thanks, past 1,001 last week and 1,002 yesterday. You managed to find a place that was open yesterday. Congratulations. Congratulations on finding a place. Congratulations on passing the exam. Now you're A+ certified. Fantastic. Welcome. Yeah, you had to get in there quick because they're starting to shut everything down. Probably, what is it going to be? You think it's going to be 2 weeks? I don't think most of us can handle being inside for more than a week. Like, I have to go out at some point. So 2 weeks is a little tough, I think, for a lot of people. Hello, New Mexico, Virginia, Philly, Ohio, San Diego twice. Welcome. Boom, boom. That's sort of how it works. Halifax, Nova Scotia, welcome. More Canadians. Good to have you here. Over on the East Coast. San Diego again. Oh, San Diego Center, April 16th. Is that what they're saying? They're going to stay closed until the 16th? I don't know that we can really make these statements at this point about how long it's going to be. It seems like at some point people have to work, don't they? So we'll see. I think this is probably not going to be quite so crazy. Australia, welcome. Houston, good to have you here. That's it's one of those things. I think we'll figure it out as we go along. And I think these dates and everything are going to be, and none of this is written in stone. We are fortunate to be in an industry that we can work remotely, that a lot of the things that we do are with computers. The only viruses we have to deal with are on the operating system. So we're very happy. I'm very happy to be in that particular line of work. So it's all worked out, I think. I think we're in very, very good shape from that perspective. So I know not everybody is fortunate enough for that. So we'll talk about what apps to use, what things to have there. If you want more details, everything is listed at professormester.com/QA. Oh, if you're worried they're going to cancel your 1001 test, they're probably going to cancel your 1001 test. I don't think there's anything to worry about. They're going to cancel it. I don't think that anybody's going to be doing a lot of testing. Maybe somebody will. Maybe there'll be places that remain open. They can sneak in some testing. That would be nice. I think everybody's trying to show restraint at this point, kind of flatten the curve. And once the curve is flattened out, we can go back to what we used to be doing, which would be nice. We are about 30 seconds away from getting started. Again, we're doing all Q&A in this first hour. Second hour, we open up the phone lines and you can call in. You can put questions in the chat room. We can do it that way as well. Yeah, some of us need those certs. Got to have them. There's some things pending, like graduations and jobs, where we have to have them there. So very good. Hello, Cape Town. Hello, Afghanistan. Thank you for being here. We've got a few seconds left. Let's get this thing started. I think we're just about ready to go. Let's start. I should probably make sure I've got it up on my screen. That will help. We'll hit the play button. Did it work? It sure did. let's get it started, everyone. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2020 Professor Messer A+ study group. This is our study group for March, where we talk all about Q&A in this first hour. I ask you questions from the 221,001 Core 1 A+ exam, and you answer them online. I'll tell you in just a moment how you make all of those things happen. And then we also, in the second hour, will open up the phone lines, and you can call in. We can put questions in the chat room. We've been talking in the pre-show with the chat room. You can, of course, put any question you'd like in there. It doesn't have to be about CompTIA or anything that's specific to what we're doing in the first hour. It's more of an open phone line. So it's more than happy to take your calls in that second hour. In this first hour, let me tell you how you're going to do this. This is not pre-recorded. This is live. As the chat room is coming in, wondering, is he really there? Did the lighting really change? The lighting has changed. We're doing exactly what we would always do for all of these. Did the lighting look really dark behind there? It could have been. I might have bumped a camera. Who knows? We'll see how that really works, but it's really live here at 12:01 and 23 seconds on March, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So the chat room, I really am talking to you. It's really not magic. It's really not pre-recorded. Thank you for being here, by the way. It's a kind of a crazy time to be here, and we're glad that you're able to join us. I'm going to ask you questions in this first hour. The way that you answer the question is you pop open a new browser window, go to professormesser.com/QA. That is a link that takes you right to the question. There's a question waiting for you there right now. You can also use an app from the App Store. You pick your favorite app store, and it's called the Socrative Student app. The Socrative Student app is the one that you would like. It may ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. It's got to be spelled right. That's not going to work very well. And if you do all of those things properly, there will be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question, but this is a question from last month. So we're rewinding ourselves just to see if you're able to get in, you're able to see what the question is, you're able to answer what the question is. The question asks, a drive in a RAID 10 array has failed. Which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? And if you are able to get in and see all of the things on the screen properly, you'll see there are four possible answers. One is power down the array, replace the drive, power on the array, and restore from backup. Another is to replace the drive and sync to the new drive. Your third option is to power down the array, replace the drive, power on the array, and sync to the new drive. And the last one is replace the drive and restore from backup. You can lock in your answers there by going to that site, professormesser.com/QA. And as we go through the study group today, remember, no answering in the chat room. Well, before we give you that answer, I'll remind you that we do one of these study groups every month. And of course, all of the replays are available to watch on the Professor Messer website. We are also got that call-in line, and I'll give that number to you. That's the one on the screen here. That line will be open in the second hour. It's not open right now, so don't call in quite yet. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It does have a big impact on how we're able to interact with our friends at YouTube. So go to professormesser.com/YouTube, and you can do that. And you can follow us and get a daily pop quiz question for the A+ on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Also putting daily pop quiz questions on Instagram. Go to professormesser.com/Instagram. Well, during this time, it's a little crazy out. A lot of people are buying things from Amazon and having them delivered. If you would like to continue to buy things from Amazon, but also help out the things that we're doing here, they can financially help support us by going to professormesser.com/Amazon before you purchase those things from Amazon. So another great thing to do if you're planning to order, it goes, you pay the exact same price, but Amazon sends us a bit of a commission, and it really does go a long way to keep things running here. So we appreciate your support with that. Sometime in this next hour, I will give you some information on a continuing education unit credit that you can earn. We will talk about that in just a moment. But as you're renewing your A+, you can earn up to 4 webinar CEUs in a 3-year period. So you can watch 4 of these and earn those 4 CEUs. I'll talk about that sometime in the first hour. So you have to listen up to be able to hear when that is going to happen. Very quickly, I'll also go through the details of the A+ exam. This A+ exam is the 221,001 and the 221,002. This exam was released in January of 2019, and you can see that it retires probably in the neighborhood of July 2022. So if you're studying this version of the exam, you're in the right place. There's no plans at any time to retire this early. If anything, it might be extended even further. We won't know, but I think July 2022 is a good number to shoot for. We'll know more as we get closer to that date. That's obviously years away at this point. There's two exams you have to pass to earn your A+. One is the 221,002. The other's the 221,001 and the 221,002. You have to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900 for the 1001. That's the one we're going to talk about today. This is a relatively new exam. It's been out just over a year now. So this exam has about 20% new topics on it. So make sure that you study from materials that are very specific to the 221,001 and the 221,002. The questions we go through today will come directly from that exam. So all the questions today will deal with mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. On Thursday, we have another live stream where we talk about the 221,002 or the Core 2 exam. And so those will cover operating system security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. We're able to do these live streams thanks to your ongoing support. And of course, I have not only every video available for you to watch for absolutely free on the internet, there's also a downloadable version you can purchase that includes video, audio, course notes. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/download A+. There's also I mentioned there's a video replay of this available on my website. There's an audio version of this also available in podcast form. So if you have a podcasting listening program, it can automatically download these as soon as I post them, which is kind of nice. You could be anywhere and just turn it on and it's there waiting for you to listen to. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/podcast. I'll also mention if you're watching the video replay on the YouTube that there are live stream timestamps that my marketing manager, Lori, is nice enough to go through this entire live stream. She documents all of the things that we do, tells you exactly when the question and answers are, where the timestamp is. You just click on the timestamp and it goes directly to it. So if you're trying to find something in a study group, that may be a very quick way to do it. Our thanks to Lori for making those timestamps available. Now let's go back to that question that I asked originally. A drive and a RAID 10 array has failed. Which of the following would be the best way to correct this issue? Well, let's have a look at what those possible answers are. And if we click how do we do, 51% said replace the drive and sync to the new drive. 19% said power down the array, replace the drive, power on the array and sync to the new drive. 15% each, tie for third, said to power down, replace, power on, and restore from backup. And 15% also said to replace the drive and restore from backup. Well, knowing what to do when your RAID array stops working is an important part of troubleshooting on the 1001 exam. Every RAID array is a little bit different in how it reacts, but generally, most of these RAID arrays are designed to be hot swappable, which means you can pull a drive out while the system is running and replace it, especially if one is faulty. So you can find the bad one that's in your list, pull that drive and replace it and immediately have the system start working. So it's not necessary to power down, make the drive changes, and then power back on. The idea is the system will always be running. And one advantage of RAID 10, what some people call RAID 1+0, is that you have the ability to have all of this data continue to be available even if you lose a drive. So powering down is sort of goes against the whole idea of having a redundant set of drives. You want to always have this data available 100% of the time. So powering off is almost never a good idea. We want to instead just replace the drive and have it resync all of that data. There's no reason to replace the drive and restore from backup because the backup is old data. We still have the new data and it still continues to run because it's RAID 1+0. The only time where you would lose the array by losing a single drive would be RAID 0. RAID 0 is zero redundancy. So if you lose any drives with RAID 0, you would have to restore from backup, unfortunately. So it's one of those situations where the important part is to consider for RAID 1.0, replace the drive, sync to the new drive. If you answered B, 53% of you got that one right. Maybe you remembered from last month. That's the whole point of the rewind question. So maybe that worked for you as well. Let's do some new questions. Now that you've gotten the idea, you've gotten into using Socrative. You can, obviously, many of you are already in there answering these questions. Now let's do some questions that you've never seen before, because I make brand new questions every month for this study group. The first new question that I do on a study group is not a multiple choice question. You know, the one we just did right here, that's a multiple choice question where you got to choose A, B, C, or D. It was sort of easy to make that happen. But the challenge that you have on the exam is the first handful of questions are questions that are not multiple choice. They're anything but multiple choice. They are fill in the blank. They can be matching questions. They could be drag and drop questions. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. You never know what those are going to be, but they're anything but multiple choice. So the first question I like to give you on these study groups is one that is not a multiple choice question. It's performance-based. So I have for you a performance-based question today on printers. This is an important consideration. We can talk about RAID also, since some folks are mentioning that in the chat room. Let's do this question first, though, that asks, and this is more of a question that you would fill in the blank on your side, but on our side, we're matching. So the question asks, match the technology to the printer type. So I have 6 different technologies. They are ink cartridge, pin matrix, chemical coated, plastic filament, transfer belt, and XPS file. Those are the 6 different technologies. And then I have 6 different printers. I made this a very easy one. It's a 1-to-1. You can't mess this one up, right? Sometimes the exam will give you a different number on both sides and some are left over. On this one, it's a 1-to-1. And the 1-to-1 printer types are laser, 3D, impact, inkjet, virtual, and thermal. Those are your 6 different printer types. So the idea is you would match one thing from technology to one on the printer side. It's a 1-to-1 in this scenario. There's not multiples that you are connecting to. So for those of you listening on the podcast, I'll go through those one more time. We've got ink cartridge, pin matrix, chemical coated, plastic filament, transfer belt, and XPS file. And then you've got the 6 different printer types: laser, 3D, impact, inkjet, virtual, and thermal. So if you think they're already in the right order, you would put into the chat, or put into, not into the chat, do not put the answer in the chat, you would put into Socrative A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, and F6. Now, it's not those, obviously, but that's how you would simply do it. You don't have to spell out everything to be able to have all of those things there. And you would then lock in your answers there and figure out what those are. Printers are a lot of questions. It seems like there's a lot of questions on printers on the exam. In actuality, there's a small section of the 3rd domain and a small section of the 5th domain for printers, but it sure seems like a lot. So when you get these printer questions and you're not ready for them, it can really throw things off on the exam. So make sure you're familiar with all those on the exam. All of these everything that's on this list, by the way, is in the exam objectives. So make sure that you know about those and what they happen to be. Going back very quickly to that previous question on RAID, RAID is not a backup system. RAID is never a backup system. Backing up your data is separate from having an array. A RAID array is just there to make sure the data still remains available if you happen to have a hardware failure. That doesn't back anything up, though. If somebody was to overwrite a file in RAID, the only way to get that file back, without having some type of versioning system in place, the only way to get that file back is to go to a backup system and retrieve that file. It's one of those situations where a lot of people try to conflate the two. They try to show that there is a difference, but often people try to push them together as if RAID and backup are a similar thing, but they are not. If you have a RAID array, you still need to make backups of that data and have all of that information there. That's pretty important. And I think some people didn't really like you run in these situations where people don't realize that. They put in a RAID array and forget that they really also need to have backing up of that data. And you can imagine on these large RAID arrays, that can be a challenge to do. Let's go back to our printer question, our performance-based question of the month. Match the technology to the printer type. The technologies are ink cartridge, pen matrix, chemical coated, plastic filament, transfer belt, and XPS file. So if we go to the first one, an ink cartridge, which one of those technologies would match the ink cartridge? If you chose for inkjet, sort of in the name itself, isn't it? Inkjet and ink cartridge all work together. I could have made the name different, but I think most of us call it an inkjet printer, don't we? It's kind of how we go through all of these things whenever we start working with the technology. We just call it what it normally is, and having all of those things there. So that can be useful. Let's go through the second one, which was pen matrix. If you are working with a print head that has a matrix of pins on it, then that is going to be an impact printer. So if you chose 3 impact, that is what that is going to be. All of those are going to have those there. To make sure you're familiar with those different technologies, inkjet and impact. Some people call it a dot matrix printer. Indeed, that is a type of impact printer. And a pen matrix or dot matrix is a similar thing. It's the same technology. If you hear those two terms, they're talking about the same type of printer. Chemical coated. What type of thing would be chemical coated? Well, that would be a thermal printer. Thermal printer uses a specially coated type of paper that is heated, and the parts of the paper that are heated change color. So if you are using a thermal printer, there's going to be a little printer head that is going to heat that paper as it goes by, and that is what makes that image on the piece of paper. The paper, though, has to be that special chemical coated paper. You just can't grab any paper and put it into a thermal printer. The fourth on our list, the fourth technology, was plastic filament. If you've never worked with these before, those are 3D printers. Plastic filament and the 3D printers are pretty popular these days. As much as we don't like the printer sections, as many as us think it might be unnecessary on the exam, there's tons of printers in our companies. There's tons of printers, not just laser printers, not just inkjet printers, but now we've got a lot of these 3D printers to be able to use them. That is one of those situations where we need to know all of these different technologies. We also have the fifth technology on this list, transfer belt. Where would we find a transfer belt? This would not be in the engine of your car, it would be in the engine of your laser printer, where if it is a color laser printer, the transfer belt is often used to put all of the colors onto the belt at the same time. It's put them all in the belt, and then the belt transfers all of that color toner to the piece of paper. Very useful to have that there. And the last technology, and the only ones that's left, if we look at all of the other 5 that are there, an XPS file, the only one we haven't mentioned is a virtual printer. In fact, in our operating systems, we rely so much on PDFs, XPS files, and virtual printers that it's almost as important to understand those technologies as it is the physical printers. In some cases, in my case, most of the products I create are from a virtual printer. So I'm making sure that you have course notes, practice exams, and other content in PDF format. So that's a hugely important part of printing from my perspective. So for those of you that were listening on the podcast, we chose ink cartridge and inkjet. Pen matrix goes to impact. Chemical coated goes to thermal. Plastic filament goes to 3D. Transfer belt is in a laser printer, and an XPS file is a virtual printer. So that should give you some ideas about the different technologies. Obviously, all of those printer types are very important. So make sure that you're familiar with all of them. They are all listed in the exam objectives, and I only went through a few technologies here that you can find in many, many different printer types. So be familiar with all of them. If any of these look funny or unfamiliar to you at all, make a note of it. You may want to go through more details on that before taking your exam. Well, good job on your answers. I flipped through them on my side, could see the answers that you submitted. A lot of you are spot on. I think a lot of you really, really know your print technologies very, very well. So good job with that one. Let's go to a question now where we can do a multiple choice question and be able to step through more multiple choice. No more filling in the blanks, no more matching questions. Our next question asks, a display monitor normally shows a ticket status screen. When the monitor is changed to a different view, the colors from the status screen are still visible. Which of the following would describe this issue? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and there'll be some options there. Please do not put an answer in the chat room. Just as a reminder, no chat room answers, no chat room hints either. Don't want to have any of those. Your possible answers here are a stuck pixel, motion trails, burn in, dead pixel, and incorrect resolution. Those are your 5 different options. The question again, for those of you listening in, a display monitor normally shows a ticket status screen. When the monitor is changed to a different view, the colors from the status screen are still visible. Which of the following would describe this issue? Is it stuck pixel, motion trails, burn in, dead pixel, or incorrect resolution? Again, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock your answer in. Please no hints or comments in the chat room. We can talk all about it once we talk about and show the answer on your side. So this is good. Some of you were mentioning printers and being able to work with printers. There are a good set of printer questions you're going to run into on your exam. So if you're not ready for printers, you may miss some. And really, printer questions, I think, once you start separating them out and looking at them individually, I think they're not so hard. It's important to know if a certain thing happens on the printout, why did that thing happen? So troubleshooting with printers becomes very, very useful to have that there. For those of you wondering what objectives questions are under, when I display the answer, I also show that information as well. So you'll be able to see that once we get to the answer on these and being able to work through all of this. I have exactly the not only the number associated with this, the exam objective number, but I also tell you what video it's in for those and have all of those pieces. So let's see how you did with this one. So the question again is, the display monitor normally shows a ticket status screen. I think we've all been there, right? When the monitor is changed to a different view, the colors from the status screen are still visible. Which of the following would describe this issue? 72% of you, I'd say it's a pretty good majority, say it's burn-in. We still got double digits, though. 12% say that's a stuck pixel. We've got 7% that said that is an incorrect resolution. And then a tie for 4th with 5% apiece is motion trails and dead pixel. Well, knowing these image quality problems is what you really need to know about. This, by the way, comes from the 221,001 exam section 5.4. The specific video for this question is referencing troubleshooting video and display issues. That's the name of the video that you're looking for in section 5.4. This is one where the problem you can run into if everything's oversized on the screen, maybe resolution is the issue, but it wasn't an oversized problem we ran into with this question. The question was more about a screen really exactly like the one we see on the screen here with this picture, where it looks like there has been information on the screen for so long that the image on the screen is effectively burned into the screen. It's effectively there for the duration. And if we change what's on the screen, we can still slightly see what was there previously. Now, this is a significant problem really on almost all monitor types. There's some level of quote-unquote burn-in, although technically these days it's not like the old phosphorus type screens where you are really burning in what the image would be, but we still have a situation with LCD displays where we have that type of issue there as well. Some types of monitors and televisions will do what's called a pixel shift. Well, they start to slightly move the image on the screen by 1 or 2 pixels, and by that way hoping that perhaps this image will not stick as much on the screen when that happens. That's one of those situations. Here's a good example. You can see this is departures for all airlines. You notice in the past, though, it seems to have just said departures. And you can see the burn-in for that departures text right behind this. This had to be in Dallas, right? Because you can see all the American Airlines that are there. It seems to be the Dallas airport and where it happens to be. And they changed that to say departures. Instead, it says departures all airlines, but we have some burn-in the background of that. So that is the right answer. It's burned in to have this here. So the 72% of you that chose burn-in, that is the right answer. Now, some of you are looking at this going, what about the other options? Because 13% of you say it's a stuck pixel. Well, if it is a single pixel on the screen and that the color on that pixel never changes regardless of what image is displayed on the screen, then you probably do have a stuck pixel. In extreme situations, you might have 2, maybe 3 stuck pixels on a screen. Some people feel that any stuck pixels is a faulty piece of hardware and they want to replace the entire screen. Some display manufacturers have policies on how many stuck pixels are acceptable and how many you have to have for them to replace the screen. So this can get a little controversial depending on how you like the pixels on your screen. But that would be a single pixel. That's not an entire image or a portion of an image. With this one, you can see really there's a whole bunch of pixels that are kind of stuck. In that case, we wouldn't call it a stuck pixel. We would really call it a burn-in situation for something like that. We've got 6% of you saying incorrect resolution. As we already mentioned, if the resolution was different, things would just appear bigger or smaller on the screen. It would not be stuck to the screen so that it was always there in a burn-in situation. And 4% said motion trails. 4% said dead pixels. Motion trails are when you do something like move the mouse and you can see an image of the mouse across the screen as it's moving. That's usually something relating to a video driver or a hardware acceleration setting in the driver that you happen to be using. The dead pixel would be a pixel that's always black. It just never turns on. So that would not be a situation where you're seeing an image after the fact. This would be one where no image ever shows up for just that single pixel. It's another situation where dead pixels may be a good reason to replace a display. In this case, 73% of you were spot on. Burn-in is the right answer. If you answered C, you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another question. Let's keep this going. Another multiple choice question that asks, a company has purchased new laptops that include integrated smart card readers. Which of the following would describe the use of this component? Would that be removable flash storage? Would it be optional OS caching? Would it be location tracking? Would it be additional authentication factor? Or would it be increased RAM capacity? 5 different options there to choose from. A company has purchased new laptops that include integrated smart card readers. Which of the following would describe the use of this component? Would it be removable flash storage? Would it be optional OS caching? Would it be location tracking? Would it be an additional authentication factor? Or would it be increased RAM capacity? If you think you know the answers, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. You can lock in your answer. Please, again, no answers in the chat room. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these. These are certainly laptops and smart cards, and how they're used are certainly on the CompTIA exam objectives. So those should be ones you're familiar with as well. So be sure to be familiar with some of these. If you're seeing any technology that I'm talking about, I try to put all of the questions and all of the answers as real things. I'm not making up an answer. I'm not making up the name of a technology in most cases. And when I do, I tell you that I made that one up. Sometimes it makes sense for me to do that, but on most questions it does not. And I try to keep them as real world as possible to have those there. Lock in that answer. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, and you can get that answer logged in. Let's see how you did with all of these. I think whenever you start working through there, it's one of those situations where it could be more than one, or maybe it's one of these. Let's see how we did. 86% of it. 86% of you said it's an additional authentication factor, although 10%, double digits, say that it is a removable flash storage. And then single digits for increased RAM capacity, optional OS caching, and location tracking. Most of you didn't think it had anything to do with those technologies. The smart card reader in a laptop is where you can really plug in these credit card sized smart cards. These smart cards have this information on it, how they work with it. Whenever I start working through these types of technologies and trying to understand how people use them, this is very niche. This is not something that everybody uses. In fact, it's not very common to see smart card readers. But in some environments, I worked with, for instance, in the federal government, I worked with an organization, the federal government, where this was mandated on every single machine. You could not authenticate to the network unless you used a smart card reader. Everybody had a smart card. You had to plug in your smart card to use your computer. Here's an example of a smart card reader on a laptop. It's integrated. It's not connected via USB in a separate device. Sometimes you'll see them that way, but you can plug them in right here on the laptop itself. Obviously, most laptops do not come with this. They would purchase laptops that were specifically made for smart card readers inside of it. And you just plug in your smart card, and it's one of the authentication factors that are used to be able to access any of the data that is on that device and on the network. These smart card readers can be very, very useful technologies, and they are used as an additional authentication factor. Notice it's an additional factor. It's not a situation where somebody could find your smart card on the floor, plug it in, and suddenly have access. It's one of the factors that are used. They probably are still also using username and password. They could use where your location happens to be. So these different authentication factors are pretty important, and knowing about smart cards is another one of those. Removable flash storage will be a different kind of interface. It would be an SD card interface or some other type of card interface on your computer. You would not use a smart card as any flash storage. There's no flash storage at all on a smart card. It's not used for OS caching. OS caching is usually storage space, SSD space, or hard drive space. And obviously, there's no space on your smart card to be able to do any type of caching. It is not used for location tracking, other than if you are plugging it in and you authenticate properly, they know that must be you, and they may be able to determine where you are based on that. But that's after you've already gone through all the authentication process and having all of those things there. The other thing that I would also see is the option for increased RAM capacity. Again, there's no storage on these devices. There's no RAM on these devices. There would not be any increased capacity for those. And to have those there, the only option that really makes sense here, and the one that is correct, 87% of you chose additional authentication factors. That is the right answer. Well, already we've talked about printers. We've talked about authentication factors and smart cards. We've gone through a number of different technologies, and even some of you in the chat room have said, that's a new technology for me. I've never seen that before. All of this obviously is in the CompTIA exam objectives. And one of the things that I've made, of course, is this entire video course. And I highly recommend that you read and watch all of these videos and make your own notes as you go along. But not all of us have enough time to be able to make these notes. And if you're like me, you make notes and they're just not very good notes. So one of the things that I did was take all of the data from every single video and I collapsed it into a single set of notes for that single exam. So I have a set of notes for the 221,001. I have a set of notes for the 221,002. If you watch all of those videos together, 18 and a half hours, 137 videos. Instead of you having to take notes for all of those, I did it for you. So this includes networking and hardware and operating systems and smart cards and printers and command lines and everything else that you might expect to see on there. These notes are available in a PDF form for $20 each. I also have physical versions of these available. I'll give you an idea of what these look like. I've got them right here on the screen. These are my course notes right here. So you can buy them and download them right now for your 221,001. There are 58 pages of course notes here. Let's do one. We were talking just now about some of these technologies, and we were going through and looking at, what was the last one we were doing? Was laptop hardware. So let's go to laptop hardware, which is right here at the top. I'll click on that and it goes to our laptop hardware screen, and we can look through all of the different technologies that are associated with that. I'm going to go through a couple pages of this so you can get a feel for some of the things that you might see. So anything that is a chart, anything that is a graphic that's important, all of the text from these videos is all in the course notes. And they are all available and clicked. So they're clickable through here from the index so that you can find what you're looking for very, very, very quickly. And of course, they're searchable as well. So you can search for a specific term and be able to go through those and find all of it. Whenever I start looking at trying to figure out what's the best thing I can do with making my time the best when I'm studying, this might save you some time as well. You can learn more about it at professormesser.com/1000notes. And very quickly, I'll also show you we've got physical versions of it. If you like an actual book version, it's exactly the same information, the same content you were looking at before, but it's in just a printed form on these nice heavy pieces of paper. It's a nice high quality graphical color output, so you can see there's plenty to look at there on the notes. And if you get the physical version, you get the digital version for free. The physical version's a little more expensive because we have to print it and ship it to you. But there are options available. You can find out all about what those different options are at professormesser.com/1000notes, professormesser.com/1000notes, and learn more about those as well. And thank you for those of you that have already got the notes. You mentioned in the chat room you really like the notes. It was worth the money, says MM. You bought both. Thank you also for doing that. This also helps support what we're doing here. And it's nice to keep the lights on, and your support of purchasing notes and our other products help us do that. So thank you so much. Let's do some more Q&A, shall we? I've got some good ones to go through. The next question we have is about home appliances. A home appliance, let me change it on your side so you can see it on your app. There you go. A home appliance is networked with other devices using Z-Wave technology. Which of the following would describe this network type? A home appliance is networked with other devices using Z-Wave technology. Which of the following would describe this network type? Would it be a WAN? Would it be Bluetooth? Would it be 802.11? Would it be PAN? Or would it be WMN? Those are the 5 different options. WAN, Bluetooth, 802.11, PAN, and WMN. Hopefully you know what all 5 of those are. All 5 real things. I didn't make any of those up. Z-Wave is a real thing. I didn't make that up. It's not a trick question. You do need to understand what those happen to be. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. If you don't know the answer, take a guess and do this on your exam as well. One thing we do know about the exam is that you are not penalized for getting a question wrong. The only thing that could possibly happen is you would guess and get an answer right and get free points. So make sure you're familiar with those and be able to work through them. That's pretty important to understand all of that. Almost the strategy for taking the exam is almost as important as the exam itself. Be sure you're familiar with all of those and being able to work through them. This is also some questions earlier. For those of you that got the physical version, you can always log into your member login at professormesser.com/members and download your digital version. Sometimes all of these things go into your spam folder as well, so check your spam folder. Sometimes you'll notice I sent you information on how to access these, and it's just sitting there hidden from you. Almost and practically 100%. I think at this point, 100% of my emails get through. Sending emails over the internet is an art form. There's a science to it. It's a combination of black magic and elfin technology. You have to do it just right. And so right now, I'm doing it just right. All the emails are getting to you. However, providers that give you the emails like Google and Microsoft and Yahoo and other sites sometimes will put my emails in the spam, and I can't stop that. I can't help that part of it. So make sure you check your spam. That's sort of a standard thing to be able to do that and having those things available. See, it could be Elvin. We never know. This is one, when we work through these, what it happens to be. We'll go through more detailed pieces of that in the after show. And some people are even asking about, what about having some sample practice tests for Core 1 and Core 2? I think I can talk a little bit about that in the after show because there are some things we are working on along those lines. Let's talk about this, though. This question that asks, a home appliance has been networked with other devices using Z-Wave technology. Which of the following would describe this network type? And if we clicked, how do we do? We're just not sure. Although 42% of us say that's a PAN, 22% say it's a WMN, 20% also said that's an 802.11, 11% say Bluetooth, and 5% say WAN. So if you were sort of on the fence on this one and thinking, I'm not exactly sure what this happens to be, you are in a good place with this and being able to work through it. The thing that with this question that I think maybe throws people is these are relatively new technologies. Z-Wave, Zigbee, and those types of technologies are relatively brand new. They're certainly newer than any of these other technologies that are on the screen. The technology we were interested in knowing about is a wireless mesh network, a WMN. This is the Internet of Things that we have now brought into our homes and being able to work from. So for instance, in my home, I have a Internet of Things that I'm using for my air conditioning system. So I can go to my mobile phone and adjust what the air conditioning is set to. My garage door, I can control using the Internet of Things. Some people I know have the same capability with lights in their house. In fact, I do have a lighting system that is Internet of Things. Now that I mention it, I've already forgotten. Yes, I installed some lights that I can control from my mobile phone and an app and have those things there. All of these devices, if they talk the same protocol, such as Z-Wave, what they do is they all talk to each other, because there may be cases in your house where the garage door is on one side of the house, your lights are on the other side, or the lighting controllers on the other side of the house. How do those two things talk to each other if they're using these low power systems to talk? What they do is they talk to the air conditioning system in the middle. They talk to a device in the middle and then start meshing together all of these devices. Every device connects to everything else to kind of self-form its own little cloud of devices inside of your house. This also means if there's ever a disruption or there's interference, they can work around it. So instead of talking directly to each other, they can go all the way around the barn and go to the other side just to talk to those other devices. There are so many different types of technologies that can be used for wireless mesh networks. Two of the most prominent that you'll find, the most familiar in the industry, are Zigbee and Z-Wave. There are some versions of 802.11 that are, at least on paper, designed to work as a wireless mesh network. That's not generally how we use 802.11 in our homes, but many of the devices that you have set up for Internet of Things will probably be a Zigbee or a Z-Wave. There are other types of topologies as well. Some of them we talk about on the exam. If you want to know more about these network types, this comes from the 221001 section 2.7. The video name for this is network types. And there are many different technologies that are in use. These technologies use different frequencies. So a lot of people in the chat room are going, what frequency does it use? How does it operate? It depends on what the technology is. They are all a little bit different in how they operate. Some are proprietary, some are not proprietary. Some are not really an open standard, but they make the standards available to everybody. It just depends on the technology and what they are using, having those things there. So in this case, our answer is a WMN, a wireless mesh network, is what we would use. Now, 41% of you said a PAN, a personal area network. Personal area networks are networks that we might take with us. It's a network's most common personal area network, and probably the one that is most associated with a PAN is Bluetooth. So your Bluetooth speaker, your Bluetooth headset, your Bluetooth, whatever you're using with Bluetooth, when you're connecting to a car with Bluetooth, that is called a personal area network because it is your personal area. There's no social distancing there. Your personal area is right around you with Bluetooth, and it doesn't go any farther than that. So it obviously would not make for a good Internet of Things technology, because if you leave your house, your network goes with you. So that's why we call it a personal network, to have those things there. The other options on here are 802.11. I think we're familiar with that technology, but it's not one that's commonly used with Z-Wave. Z-Wave has its own technology that uses its own topology. And a wide area network is obviously used across very long distances. Wide area network would not be used by Z-Wave either in having those there. So hopefully, as you work through these and understand these different technologies, each one of them has some different uses, use cases, and examples. For the example of Z-Wave, the best and really the only way to categorize that based on this list is as a wireless mesh network. That should help you with understanding more about what those happen to be. Let's get another question or two in. We've got some time left to be able to have this here. Our next question on the list asks, which of the following can be installed in Windows to allow discovery of Apple devices on the local network? Which of the following can be installed in Windows to allow discovery of Apple devices on the local network? Is it Bonjour? Is it Finder? Is it SMB? Is it AirPrint? Is it SNMP? We have 5 different options. Which of the following can be installed in Windows to allow discovery of Apple devices on the local network? Is it Bonjour? Is it Finder? Is it SMB? Is it AirPrint? Is it SNMP? I have 5 different options there to choose from. Lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and see if you happen to know what that one is. Maybe some of you have even installed this in Windows. You may already be familiar with this technology and being able to work through these. Something that you do need to sometimes run into. That's an increasing thing that we're seeing, of course. I think almost everybody's network these days, they have a lot of Windows systems at your organization, and then they're also Apple and Linux as well. So we are often having to interoperate between these different operating systems in many different ways. So that's one that becomes pretty useful to you. I worked in an organization that was almost 50-50 Windows and Mac OS. Some organizations are practically all Windows, and they fight tooth and nail to keep Mac OS out. And then, of course, that one person brings it in, and now they have to support Mac OS. And once you get the one device in, suddenly, yeah, hey, that's pretty nice. How come I don't have Mac OS? I'm browsing all day. I need Mac OS as well. I understand the browsing is so much easier in Mac OS, and so you can't fight it. Then you have to go through the process of supporting that operating system. And I think everybody's pretty much running Linux in some way, shape, or form in their network. So you may find cases where you have to find a way to interoperate with all of these different devices. So we'll have to see what happens with all of those. We'll have to figure out what that is. Let's see what you answered on this one. So of the following, which of the following can be installed on Windows to allow discovery of Apple devices on the local network? Is it Bonjour? Is it Finder? Is it SMB? Is it AirPrint? Is it SNMP? 68% of you say you would install Bonjour. Why do I say it like that? You would install Bonjour, and it would be on your network. 11% say it's Finder. 9% say SMB. 9% said SNMP. Almost a 3-way tie for second. To have that there. That's a pretty close one between all 3 of those, and only 3% said AirPrint is what you would install to have that there. Well, having to share this from an operating system is a pretty important thing to know. There are different ways to do this. For Windows, for example, if you want to share files and prints between Windows devices, you would use some common ports to do this. Probably the most common is TCP 445, but you might also see TCP 139, UDP 137, and UDP 138 being used for different functions inside of Windows to make that happen. The real challenge you have, of course, is that sometimes you want Windows to talk to Apple. So you want Microsoft to talk to Apple. The way that Apple devices can be discovered on the network is to use a protocol created by Apple called Bonjour. It's part of Mac OS, and you can add it to Windows. If you've installed, for example, iTunes, one of the capabilities of iTunes is to be able to stream information from other Apple devices, and the way that it finds those devices on the network is using Bonjour. It's very useful to have that. That's one where it does come in handy to have that capability on the network. AirPrint, by the way, is what iOS devices use to be able to print directly to printers that are AirPrint compatible. It is not something that you would install onto a Windows machine because those Windows machines can really already talk to those printers. You would not need AirPrint to be able to do that. So hopefully those types of technologies are things that you are familiar with. And I think based on the list of people that have answered, 68% of you were already familiar with Bonjour. AirPrint we talked about. Finder is for lack of a better word, the file manager inside of Mac OS. So if you're running a Mac OS device and you have it on your screen, Finder is what you would use to be able to move files around and find information, very similar to File Manager or the File Explorer that is in your Windows operating system. 9% said SMB, the server message block, is the protocol that Microsoft uses to be able to talk Microsoft file sharing between devices. So that's one where really it's Microsoft only is SMB, although other devices like Linux and Mac OS can also talk SMB so that there is some compatibility there between devices that's built into those operating systems. You do not need to install SMB in Windows to discover Apple devices on the local network. You can just tell Mac OS, make sure these files are available and can be seen and share them as SMB. Very useful to have. And there's other things you can add on to the operating system on Linux, for example, like Samba, to be able to do some SMB services. And the last one, SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. SNMP, very useful as well, to be able to pull statistics and gather statistics from infrastructure devices on your network, from switches, from routers, from firewalls, from servers. It's commonly used by your network administration team to be able to monitor devices on the network. It's not something you would install on Windows to allow discovery of Apple devices on the local network. So that is very clearly, in this case, the only answer here would be A, bonjour. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, remember I talked about that at the beginning of the study group, and you would really like to get a 1 hour of webinar category CEU, where I will send you an email that says you must have watched this. I certify that you, person, have watched 1 hour of this webinar. You need to follow these instructions, because if you don't follow these instructions, I can't provide you with the CEU. Following the instructions is actually part of earning the continuing education unit credit. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link on that page, any one of those pages on the website. That Contact Us link will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address. Make sure your email address is correct, or this will not get back to you. See how that works? And there is a subject line there. If you would be nice enough to put, this is the March 2020 A+ study group. And in the body of the message, on a single line, please put the word bonjour. Put that word in there. And of course, you can put any other text on there you would like. I'm the one reading through these and going through the process of submitting them and emailing them back to you. So make sure if you putting that in the message that it's very clear that I can read the word bonjour by itself. And then you're welcome to put any other message you would like in there. I can't necessarily reply back to every message I get, but I do read through every single email and message that you send to me. So I am at least aware of these things that you are there. So being able to do that. And that's pretty useful as well to have that. And then I will, in about a week or so, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, I will send you back an email that adds that certification. If you are short on time, to be able, you need to submit this quickly. You're in tight time frames for your CEUs. Let me know in the message, and I'll make sure I get one back to you very quickly, even if I have to construct it manually and send it to you. I will send you an email that has been digitally signed, so you cannot change that information in the email. Can't suddenly change it to 10 hours. It's a single hour, or else your digital signature will not work properly. See how that works? Take advantage of these technologies with encryption and digital signatures and public key infrastructure and having all of those things there. So hopefully you can catch all of those and be able to work through and earn your CEU. We've got time for another question, so let's get one in here. The next question on the list, a server administrator has been tasked with installing an operating system and application on a cloud service. Which of these would best describe this cloud service type? A server administrator has been tasked with installing an operating system and application on a cloud service. Which of these would describe this cloud service type? Would it be a SaaS? Would it be hybrid? Would it be PaaS? Would it be private? Would it be IaaS? How come we don't call that? Well, I think I know why we don't call that. We have SaaS, hybrid, PaaS, private, and IaaS. See how that works? We need to know what all 5 of those are. All 5 of those are actual cloud service types, but only one really fits in this scenario. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA and see what you think it is. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you would go. Put all of those in there. Hopefully this is one. Cloud services is a big percentage of, a relatively big percentage of the exam, considering how little information is in that domain. There's just not a lot of details in the domain, not a lot of individual exam objectives, and yet, relatively speaking, it's just as much a percentage of the exam as the other topics, as the other domains. In fact, let me see if I can pull this up on my side so we can really get the statistics on that. For A+, Find it on my screen, A+. Let's look through the exam objectives for the A+. And those exam objectives, domain 4 is the one for the virtualization and cloud computing. 12% of the exam is that particular version. I've got this on my screen here. So 12% of the exam is virtualization and cloud computing. And if I go down to section 4, you can see I'm going through section 2, 3 is like 9 different, 10, 11 different sections in domain 3. In domain 4, you have section 4.1 and 4.2. That's it. But it's 12% of the exam. So that's a good one. If you want to spend time and get an easy 12%, those are the only things you need to know in that section 4. That should help you a little bit as you're going through these and trying to figure out what that happens to be. So hopefully you're familiar with that. Let's see if you are familiar with that. Let me flip back to my screen so we can see what it happens to be and have all of those things there. Let's step through and see how you answered. A server administrator has been tasked with installing an operating system and application on a cloud service. Which of these would describe this cloud service type? 33% of you said IaaS, 31% of you said SaaS or SaaS, 21% of you said PaaS, 14% said hybrid, 1% said private. So those are really a tie for first, almost exactly the same. We did not get a majority. We really need to look at this question then and figure out the details of this and have this here. When you start breaking this out and knowing the details of it, it really is starting to make more sense for what we're trying to do. Let's see, for example, what we wanted to do here. It was an operating system. They wanted you to install an OS, and they want you to install an application. So there are multiple things that you are going to be responsible for doing to get this cloud service running and having all of those things there. So as we step through and trying to figure this out, we have a few options available. Most of us said SaaS. Some of us said IaaS. If we had to really go between those two and try to figure out the details, the one that you would work through is infrastructure as a service. Sometimes you'll hear this called hardware as a service, HaaS. This is effectively a situation where you are outsourcing the equipment. You're using someone's hardware, and then you're taking it from there. You're installing the operating system. You are installing the applications. You're managing access to the operating system. You're managing the overall administration of the system. You're not relying on the service provider to do a lot of the operating system management and other details. You're really looking at just needing, I just need some CPU. I just need some hard drive space. I just need a network card. I'll take it from there. And then you get your Linux people on it, your Windows people on it, your Mac OS people on it, and then they start installing and doing the things that they need to do. One of the challenges with this, of course, is that you're putting your applications and your data on these systems that are in the cloud. So you really don't have a lot of control. If suddenly that cloud provider said, well, we're shutting down, and they turn off the hardware, it also effectively turns off your data, turns off your application, turns off your operating system. Fortunately, we haven't seen a lot of that in the industry. If anything, these providers are growing in their size. A very common version of this is a web service provider. So if you've got, for example, if you go to professormesser.com, you're connecting to my web server that is a virtual server in the cloud. It's a cloud server, and it is one that I have purchased an infrastructure as a service platform offering from this cloud service provider. And that's where my website, really multiple web servers, a load balancing server, a database server, a caching server. I've got bunches of servers. Whenever I need one, I just click a button and it spins it up. When I need another server, I click a button, it spins it up. So getting all of those things done, very, very simple, because all I have to do is use the capacity that cloud service provider was already creating. They provide me with the CPU. They provide me with the hard drive space. They give me the network connection, and I take it from there. And in my particular case, a lot of the technologies are Linux. So I'm loading the Linux operating system. I'm loading the web server software. I'm loading the database server software. I'm the administrator for those systems. So I manage access to those. I manage patches and upgrades. I do all of that. Now, my service provider also helps me with some of those things as well. So it's not a pure infrastructure as a service play. It's kind of infrastructure as a service with a little bit of IT help layered on top of it. And I think a lot of service providers give you a little bit of options to be able to use that. But if you ever hear a configuration like this and saying infrastructure as a service, they're just giving you some hardware and going with it. Now, in our list, a lot of you chose SaaS, software as a service. Well, you'll notice in this case, I'm the one installing the operating system. I'm the one managing the application. There's no software they're providing to me as a service. There's like zero software as a service in this scenario. It's all hardware as a service in this particular configuration. If I was not installing an operating system, if I was not installing software, I was not managing the software, I was not having to do upgrades to the software, I didn't have to install software patches, I did not have to manage the authentication into the software, and all I did was open up a browser window and it said, please log in, and I typed my username and password and suddenly the application was there, that's software as a service. So if you are using Google Mail, if you're using Microsoft Outlook on the web, if you're using Yahoo Mail, those are very good examples of software as a service. If you are, for instance, connecting in and looking at this page of Socrative, Socrative is software as a service. I just put my username and password in. I upload my questions. I type my questions into Socrative. I don't manage the Socrative platform. I don't manage the hardware. I don't even know where the hardware is. I don't manage the software. I don't manage patching it. I don't do anything. So the process of actually taking this test here, as we're doing it online interactively, is a good example of software as a service. We're working through this. A hybrid configuration is one that is both public and private, which is also compared to private in that scenario, where the cloud piece itself is either one that's available publicly in a public cloud, or it's maybe a cloud-based system that we have internal within our own data center. If it's a combination of those that we're using, it would be hybrid. If it was in our own data center, it would be private. And as we step through the different cloud-based systems and working through them, those cloud models are available to see at, so it is video 4.1, series 4.1, the cloud models. So go through and have a look at those if you're trying to figure out all of the different options there and what you might have available for those cloud models. That might help you too as you're trying to figure out the details of what you need to do to study for this exam. I think those will become pretty important. And if you're also studying for this exam, the last one we didn't talk about was platform as a service, PaaS. Platform as a service is one where you need to build an application for yourself, but you don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to hire a whole set of developers to build something from the ground up. So instead, you can work with a third party that has created a platform of different modules that you can plug together like Legos and create your own application based on code that they already have on the network. Very easy to do that. So I don't have to, if I need an authentication screen, they've already got a Lego block with an authentication screen. Great, we'll stick that on our app. And then once you log in, I need an inventory system. Great, they already have an inventory Lego. I'll just click that to it. And now I have a login and an inventory system. Well, this is easy. So platform as a service becomes very useful in that scenario. If you're using something like Salesforce.com, Salesforce.com is a whole section of their platform, of their product offering that is platform as a service. Probably most of what people use on Salesforce.com is their platform as a service offering. So the answer here, for those of you that are installing your operating system and application on cloud service, if you answered E, infrastructure as a service, that's the right answer. Hopefully that's one you chose as well. Infrastructure as a service, to be able to work through what those happen to be. Now, if you're gone through these and you're wondering, oh, there's a lot on this exam that I need to go through, then you may want to be sure you have a copy of the exam objectives. They will tell you everything you need to know to be successful on this exam. They're a great checklist before you walk into the exam. Do I know everything that can be thrown at me? CompTIA has listed it all out. You saw me going through a page of that on my screen. This is the exam objectives that I was showing. In fact, I'll bring this up again so you can see it. And they list out every single topic you need to know. There's pages and pages and pages of this They pretty much tell you everything right there. You can get a copy of this by going to professormesser.com/objectives. In the chat room, some folks said, how often do you do these things? Well, we do the A+ 1001 live study group once a month. We do a 1002 study group. We do a Network Plus study group, and we do a Security Plus study group. So if you want to show up next month for these, we have a study group for the 1001 is on April the 1st, Wednesday. That's not a full April Fool's joke. We really are doing one on April the 1st. And the 220-1002 is on Friday the 3rd. And then we skip a week and then we cram, and it's another odd month for live streams, by the way. Normally we do one a week. Well, now we're kind of cramming them together a little bit because of weirdness in my schedule. But on April 16th and 17th is the Network Plus and Security Plus study groups. Now we do a 220-1002 A+ study group 2 days from now. So if you want to come back on March the 19th on Thursday, we'll do another one of these, but they'll be for all 220-1002 study group. All the questions from the 1002 exam. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. Can you believe it? We went through that pretty quick. But I will open up the phone lines because we're not done. We do an after show and where you can ask me anything. Well, almost anything. In that after show, I'll take questions from the chat room and I'll open up the phone lines as well. We'll talk all about that in a moment. Don't forget about your Q&A that you can get for A+ every single day by following us on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Also on the YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about Instagram, not on this page, but our Instagram feed also has these A+ questions in a carousel. So you have a question, then you can swipe to the left and see what the answer is on Instagram. Don't forget about my course notes. Support us there at professormesser.com/1000notes. And don't forget about Amazon, which is also a great way to support us without having to spend any money out of your pocket. Visit professormesser.com/Amazon before you purchase anything on the Amazon website. Well, thanks for joining us for the first hour. Stick around for the after show. We hope to see you there. If not, we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone. Well, now I will get things started on my side. Here we go. So let's get some of this set up. I have to now set up the call-in lines very quickly, if you will bear with me in a moment. I'll get those call-in lines set up, and then you will be able to call in. I'll also take questions from the chat room as well to be able to have those there. We've got plenty to go through. So let's find the thing I was looking for. There it is. I'm going to host a show on my side. I'm going to start a show on my side. And then I will call in. I have to call into my own show to be able to have this here. So bear with me one moment while I bring up my own Skype and call in with my Skype to be able to get there. Thank you. You're welcome. And then we'll type in some numbers and I'll hit a pound sign and it says I put in my PIN into this list and the nice lady says, welcome. See, that's how I know it works, is you are welcome as well to call in now. And I'll give you information on how you can call in. If you are in the continental United States, you can call in on a telephone. This is voice communication. Toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. If you're west of the Rockies, that number is 855-785-7545. Be able to have that there. Now, if you are outside the continental U.S. and you would still like to call in, you're welcome also to call in by going to Skype, and you can use this same phone number on Skype for free. That same number, +1 855-785-7545, and having those things there. That could be useful as well. Have a look and see if that's something that you would like to do. You can also put questions into the chat room. So be sure to put questions in there. I'll also scan through those and we'll be able to answer them as well. Yes, behind me, that's a cricket ball. That's exactly what it is. You can't see it, but out further to the back there is actually a cricket bat up there as well to have those there. That might help you when you're getting through this and trying to figure out the details. Yeah, sometime in that first hour was the continuing education details. You'll want to go back and have a listen to that once we are done here. Have the details of that there. Let's have a look at some of the questions that are coming in, because we do have some phone calls that are coming in. Let's first hop over there, and then we'll hit some of the people that are putting questions into the chat room. We'll go to the 832 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Clay. I'm calling from Houston, Texas.
Welcome, Clay. What can we do for you?
Yeah, so the CE, credentials or the credit that you were talking about we could get by watching the video, could you share more about that? I literally don't even understand what that means.
Well, are you someone who've already gotten your A+ certification, your Network Plus, or your Security Plus?
No.
So this is
I haven't gotten. Yeah.
Well, once you earn your certification, it is good for 3 years before it will expire. And during that 3-year period, there are a number of different things you can do to renew that certification without having to take the exams again. Because nobody wants to take the exams again. And in fact, most people do not take the exams again. They instead will collect continuing education unit credit by doing different things like going to a training class, visiting a trade show, or watching a webinar. And you can earn hours towards renewing your A+ certification by performing these different tasks. This is pretty common in the industry for different certifications. There are different things you can do. There are also things that you can do, like taking a renewal exam. Sometimes CompTIA will offer those. And they even have a service called the CertMaster CE, CertMaster Continuing Education, where you can take an online it takes about 4 to 6 hours, they say, taking this course online, and that will also renew your certification. So they give you many different ways to do it. Collecting hours for CEUs is one of the ways to do it. And by watching the webinar that we just did, you can earn 1 hour towards that renewal amount that you would need to renew your certification.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you so much, buddy.
I appreciate the call. It's one of those when you whenever you start trying to figure out how am I going to renew this thing, you don't want to wait until the last minute. So these might be things that can help you as you're going through this and figuring out, what do I do to be able to renew? Let's go again to 832. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, so we can. What's your question?
Yeah, this is calling from Houston. I just want to take you back a little bit for the last question you asked. Because I'm studying for my A+, and the question says I can't really remember anymore, but he's talking about an administrator that is asked to install an application and operating system on the cloud base.
Right.
So I thought for me, for what I've been reading, when I saw the question, I just believed that it's going to be software as a service. But when you said infrastructures as a service, I was like, infrastructures is like talking about the equipment and the requirements, including the hardware and how it supports operation. So I was a little bit confused about that.
And I think part of the confusion also is the industry. It keeps telling us over and over and over, software as a service, software as a service. We almost think everything is software as a service. In our particular example, we gave infrastructure as a service was the answer because we were the ones responsible for installing the software. We were the ones responsible for installing the operating system and maintaining it. We were the ones responsible for installing an app. But if you're using something like software as a service, it's a very different scenario. For instance, do you use a web-based email? Do you use like Google Mail or Yahoo Mail?
Yes.
Me too. I love it because I don't have to install an operating system. I don't have to. Do you ever patch your Google Mail?
Yeah.
So you're not even responsible for that. You don't have to install patches. Or do you ever install security updates for Google Mail? No, you don't. Do you ever install a new version of Google Mail on your computer? You don't do that either.
No.
So, and I don't either. And I like not having to do that, by the way. All I do is I log in, and that's it. I don't have to worry about anything. That is an example of software as a service. So whenever you run into those scenarios where you're not the one managing it, you're not the one handling software patches, you're not doing security patches, you're not doing any of those things, it's software as a service. So if you're trying to differentiate between both of those, if it's ever a situation where you're in charge of the administration, probably it's going to be infrastructure as a service. If you're doing nothing but logging in and using it, then it's software as a service. There's your differentiation.
Yeah, it's just a little bit confusing, because when they say application and software, your mind just goes straight to software as a service. But, it's pretty clear now, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate you calling. That's one also you have to kind of think about who's doing, we're talking about applications and both of those, who's the one managing the app? If I'm managing it, infrastructure as a service. If somebody else is taking care of it for me and I don't have to manage it at all, probably software as a service. So that was a great call. That's a good differentiation. I appreciate you doing that. From the chat room very quick and being able to get there and the details. Some of you in the chat room are talking about things like resolving memory speeds. One of the things you'll notice, by the way, is none of that is in the CompTIA exam any longer. Years ago, we did have a requirement to understand kind of the nuanced details of some of the memory specifications. In reality, I think CompTIA and pretty much everybody realizes you just go out to the manufacturer website and ask, what kind of memory do I need? And they tell you. And you don't have to know a lot of the details about what's behind that. So you don't have to worry about it on your exam either. Not something that's in the exam objectives, fortunately. Before we go back to the phones, thanks for holding, everyone. Another question, kind of an administrative question that comes up. If you have, the question asks, what would happen if I take my 1001, then the exam is retired, the 1000 series is retired. As I mentioned, they might retire it around July of 2022. So you take the 1001 or the 1002 now and you pass it. You pass one of those. And then July of 2022 comes along. You've just not taken the second exam yet. You kind of forget. You run out of time. And then the exam series is retired. Now what happens? Well, now you start over. That's why we always try to mention to you when the exam version was released. Usually it's a 3.5-year cycle. So 3.5 years later, that exam series will be retired, and that's why it's so important to know when that exam series is going to be retired, because if you've only passed one of them, you have to make sure you pass the other one sometime before it's retired. So that's pretty important to be able to have there and be able to work through that. I think that will help for me too. If I ever in a situation where I have to figure out what I'm going to do, that timing is pretty important. Now, in our case, as we're recording this live, it's March of 2020. We have years before these exam versions are retired. So don't worry so much about the details of that. Right now, you can focus on getting both of those exams done well before any time close to that retirement date. We got plenty of ramp to be able to do that. Back to the phone lines, the 201 area code. Hello, caller. Which name were you calling from?
Hi, this is Joyce, and I'm calling from Laurel Hill, Florida.
Hi, Joyce. Another Floridian. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, I'm having a really hard time understanding virtualization.
Well, welcome to the rest of the world, by the way. Same situation. Yeah. Is there a particular aspect of virtualization that's driving you crazy more than another?
No, pretty much all of it. It's like the one part of the exam I just cannot seem to get.
Then I think, and the thing that kind of helps me when I get to these situations where it's a technology that I just can't wrap my head around, I would do this a lot when I worked with firewalls, is there would be a new firewall technology that I've been working with or a new dynamic routing protocol that I was working with. And no matter how many books I read and how many things I read on the internet, for some reason, a lot of the content on the internet is written to explain a topic to you as if you already know what the topic is. And that's something that's very frustrating to me. If I start reading about a dynamic routing protocol, they're already talking to me as if I already knew it. But that doesn't help me if I'm trying to learn it. So one of the things that helped me when I was doing that was to do more labs, to do more working with it, to actually run the technology in a test network or on a test system and be able to see it working. And when I did that, it made a lot more sense to me. It seems like a lot of the problem I would always run into was the fear of the unknown. It always seemed completely insurmountable, this very highly technical topic. How am I ever going to know how this works? And then I put in a lab and run it, and I go, well, that's it? That's not as hard as I thought it was going to be. And that's usually the gotcha I always find when I'm working with this. If you are trying to get your arms around virtualization, one of the best things you can do is to do some virtualization yourself. So I would recommend that you download and use some virtualization software on your computer. And one of the things that you can use that's common across practically any operating system is virtualization software from VirtualBox. I think that's probably one of the most popular that's out there. And the website for VirtualBox is, I think it's virtualbox.org. Is it not? It is virtualbox.org. This is a piece of software that is created and run by Oracle. So pretty big company behind using this. It runs and works fantastic as virtualization software. This is what we would call a virtualization client that we would run on top of an existing operating system. So if you're running Mac OS, if you're running Windows, if you're running Linux, you can load VirtualBox right on top of it. And VirtualBox will allow you to run other operating systems on top of the operating system you're already using. And neither one of those will conflict with the other, like magic. The other thing that you're going to need is not only the virtualization client like VirtualBox, you're now going to need a VM. You're going to need a virtual machine to run on top of that virtualization software. If you're studying for your A+, one of the best places you could go for a virtual machine that is already built out for you is the Microsoft Edge developer website. You can easily find this by going to modern.ie, modern, as in the modern day, modern.ie as in Internet Explorer. And in there is a reference pull-down menu for tools. And in that tools pull-down menu is a list of virtual machines they make available to you for testing. This will help you also if somebody like you is not running, maybe you're running Mac OS and you want to use Windows for your A+ exam, and they have options here. In fact, choose a virtual machine platform. VirtualBox is listed right here. VirtualBox, Vagrant, Hyper-V, VMware, and Parallels, so they support tons of VMs. When you click VirtualBox, it will download probably a 2 gig file that is Windows 10 with legacy Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer 11 that will run for 90 days for free on your computer. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to register. You don't have to give them a credit card number. You don't have to do anything. Just download it and be able to run it. The reason I choose VirtualBox for this is that they make it easy to download. It's open source software, and it's available right here. You just go to virtualbox.org, and there's a big button for download VirtualBox 6.1. There is some virtualization software available from VMware called VMware Player. It is also free. They don't want you to find it on their website, so they hide it on their website. And make you seem like when you're going through it that you have to pay for it, but in reality, there's a free version on there that you could use. And just the obfuscation of that makes me tend to force everybody over to VirtualBox because it's so much easier to be able to find and work with. But that's what I would recommend. Run it. You'll load it up. It gives you great instructions on how to get Windows running on it, and you can almost stumble through it. There's plenty of other videos and websites that will take you through a tutorial of that. And when you do that and suddenly Windows 10 is running on top of your existing operating system, suddenly things will start clicking for you, and you can start playing around with the networking settings. You can try changing things in one operating system and see that it doesn't affect what you're doing in the other operating system. It's a great way to get some hands-on in labs without really having to work too hard to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Joyce. Hopefully, let us know how that goes, and I think that will help you a lot for getting your arms around some of the virtualization topics.
Yeah, I think it will too. Thank you again so much. Appreciate
the call. That's one I always recommend doing, VirtualBox. I've got that running right now on my machine. I use it all the time. It is just so, well, I'm running Mac OS, so a lot of the things that I'm teaching you are in Windows. Every screen you see from my computer, practically 100% of the things that you see me doing in my videos are in a VM, in a full screen, running on top of Mac OS. But it's really Windows because it's a virtual machine. That's the beauty of it and being able to work through those. I think that's a highly recommend working through those if you're someone who's working along those lines. And so that's why, for those of you asking in the chat room, some of you say, I love VirtualBox. Some of you prefer running VMware. Hyper-V is another good example. Hyper-V is Microsoft's flavor of a virtualization software. I generally don't promote Hyper-V because not everybody listening and watching this is running Windows, and Hyper-V is only available for Windows. But that's certainly run Hyper-V if you would like to. You saw that some of the options available for download on that website for modern.ie. One of those options was indeed Hyper-V for Windows. So you got lots of options. Use the one that makes sense for you. Run the one that you like. one that you have available, and being able to get there and being able to work through all of those. I think that can be useful to have those capabilities in your operating system. And it's going to help you on the exam too, which is probably even more important. Back to the phones real quick to the 818 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing? My name is Cameron. I'm calling from the Los Angeles area.
Hey, Cameron. What can we do for you?
So basically, well, first of all, I definitely want to say thank you so much for all of your free content and all of the actually paid for the PDF.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And
Thank
it
you.
actually works out great. So basically, I just want to find out, I kind of need a little direction and possibly hopefully you can help. But I'm just beginning in IT and I kind of want to get started in system admin. As of right now, I work for a great company that is just focusing on printers, and we also do Service Advantage on different devices as well.
Okay.
But I kind of want to get back into, it's sad to say, a little office filling and kind of get my fingers into a couple different things rather than just focusing on the hardware of machines.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Is there a different, what should I try to focus on in trying to get into a system admin position?
My first job in this industry was kind of the break fix guy, kind of a printer cable delivery guy for a small computer company in South Miami. My job was to when they would ship a new computer to a person in a corporation, and the corporation had outsourced the setup of that computer to this computer company. So I would show up after the computer was delivered, literally would plug in the keyboard, plug in the mouse, plug in the monitor, make sure it powered up, and then they could sign the form and I would leave. Not a very high pressure or very complicated, certainly not a very technically difficult job to do. I mean, it literally plug the blue cable into the blue port kind of thing. Probably one of the boringest kind of technical jobs you can think about. And it sounds a lot like your scenario. You're sort of in this beginner role with technology. You've kind of got this niche where you're working with this very particular type of hardware. But now it's now time to spread our wings and fly up and do something a little different. What's already great is you already know what you would like to do, which is a situation I found myself in. In my particular case, I found one of our clients that had this, it was a very large multi-billion-dollar insurance company. They had a big IT help desk, and they needed people to come work in the help desk. So that's what I did. I applied with them and went over to work for them and worked in their help desk to be able to learn what they were doing there. And there I learned about workstation operating systems, server operating systems, networking, mainframes, just tons of different technologies under the surface. And from there started branching out into other. In fact, that's where I went to server administration, then to networking, then to security, and finally to here over a period of 25 years. So I think usually when you're in those beginner technical roles, one of the best things you can do is to either find a place that has a broader help desk role associated with it, or start using some of these connections that you've created in the industry. If you're interested in getting more into server administration, one of the things you might want to do is attend some of the local Microsoft user groups in your area. You're in a fantastic geography in LA because there's just tons of technical people there. There's tons of companies there with these technologies, and there's some pretty nice user groups in that area. The people that attend the Microsoft user groups are going to be the same people that are hiring for people to manage these Microsoft systems. So if you have an opportunity to do people networking, and although we're in this kind of weird time in our world right now where we're not able to do a lot of people networking, at least not over the next couple of weeks, but next month, the month after that, we will be back to normal. And these user groups will ramp up again. And maybe we'll even do more of these user groups online, and you get to meet these people who are managing these systems. What a great place to share your resume, to ask them what skills they're looking for when they're hiring people to manage their systems. What type of qualifications are they looking for? people that attend these user groups are more than happy for you to pick their brains and find out ways that you could do more in this industry. They like to see people who are interested in doing and learning more. So you may find some of them are even asking you, can you please send me your resume so I can send it to HR? Because if we hire you, I'll get a finder's fee. So there may be a financial reason to have them start with their organization that you may not even realize. They may be just as interested in hiring you as you are of you being hired by them. So there's a couple of ways to do that. I think the people networking part is probably the best way to go about doing that. And as I mentioned, obviously, we've seen over the last week, it's kind of a weird market for hiring people, but this is going to change as the weeks and months progress. And we're going to be in a situation where suddenly we need to hire people again, and they're going to start grabbing these resumes. Now's a good time to kind of lay that foundation, start meeting the people, find out when they're meeting, where they meet some of these people online, get into their LinkedIn group, get into their Facebook group, and start conversing with folks. It makes a big difference when they finally need to start filling some of those open positions in their organization. Cameron?
Yeah, exactly. So actually, I wanted to actually point that out as well. I know this is a weird time, but if anybody does have like a platform or, a meeting, or even if I know we can't probably meet right now, but we can meet through YouTube or something like that, just so I can kind of expand a little bit more. My @ name is Creative KP with K.
There you go. So, some self-promotion. I'm all for it.
A little bit.
Good for you.
But yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And with me being in the field still, I'm hoping they actually give me like a week or two off just so I can study a little bit more.
That would be nice.
Get this A+ out the way. It's
an opportunity. We can look at it that way. As I mentioned in the pre-show, we are in an industry where we are kind of in sort of one of the best industries to be in right now because we are able to work on things technical. We know there's going to be a need for our services throughout this particular situation that we're in, and certainly when we come out of it on the other side. So now's the best time to start gathering our skills, to start putting things together. What a great time to start studying to get the certification that you need. It's really the best thing that you can do in probably not the greatest situation. So why not make the most of it?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely appreciate you being able to take my call.
Thanks, Cameron.
I hope you have a great day and stay safe.
Same to you, sir. Best of luck. That's always something to think about. One of the things that you might also think about if you are talking about people networking right now, it's a little bit of a challenge, but look at all the ways that you can people network. You can people network with Discord. You can we're doing it right now with just a live stream and taking some phone calls and getting questions in the chat room. We're meeting people and talking with people like this. So this is one of those situations where the technology is there. It's really remarkable we haven't done more connecting like this in the past. How many times have you been in a meeting, for those of you that have worked these companies, you've been in a meeting thinking, I drove in for this. We could have done this online. You could have done this in an email. Why are we in this room right now? Because people don't think that way. They think you kind of have to be in a room and you have to see people, and there is an importance to that. But in a lot of things that we do at a technical level, just tell us what to do. We'll get it done. Send it to us in an email. Let's do a video conference and do this. I think more of it could have been done in the past. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to rethink that and think that maybe there are some better ways to converse and talk and chat. And also, by the way, if there's not a user group in your area for Microsoft, there's not a user group in your area for technology or networking or something that you would like, it might be a really good opportunity for you to start one. Who better to look towards for leadership and the skills you would want to hire than somebody who is managing your local user group? So there's lots of opportunities there, regardless of who you happen to be. Let's go back to the chat room. We'll go to 757. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello, caller.
How are you? My name is Margaret. I'm calling from Virginia Beach.
Hi, Margaret.
And, oh my God. Okay, so I'll just be quick with this one. So I come from a background of no tech, right?
Okay.
And
Me too.
I'm so excited about it. So I am done with studying for my A+ at the moment. I was just about to pay for my exam, and I'm just a bit worried about whether I should pay for it now. I don't want to pay for it and have it canceled. However, I'm so pumped up right now because the first time I did it, I failed. So I went back and added more study materials, and now I feel so prepared. In fact, now that I have now studied, I realized that, oh my God, really? Like I know this thing better now and everything, and I'm so ready to take the exam. Now, that's the first question. What do I need to do in this social distancing and everything, with everything going on in the world right now, with the pandemic? What do I need to do? Should I go ahead and pay for the exam and write it? Is it advisable to get out there in this time and go and write it? Or should I wait for, about a week or two to see if things are going to get better? That's my first question. My second question is, I'm interested in the security part because aside from studying for my A+, I've also done like a huge research on, the tech world. My husband is a cybersecurity analyst and a validator.
Great.
He works with the NavAir. And it's so exciting to see. Actually, the truth about it is he introduced me to this, and I come from a school of thought where it's always nice when the husband and the wife like the same things. And I found to like this as well, and I'm excited. So my question to you is, I'm interested in the security part of this, and I wanted to get into the Scholarship for Service program as well, but this entails me getting my master's in information security.
Wow, okay.
Or basically cyber operations, because the approved schools by NSA are, the programs are basically in cyber operations than any other thing else.
Gotcha.
So, but the rules of, okay, I have to get a job before 18 months, I start to pay them and all of that, all those rules and regulations, I just need your advice on, should I go in the route of getting my master's after getting my security plus and maybe having someone pay for it with the Scholarship for Service program and then work for the government, and then afterwards maybe I can move on? What exactly is going on in the tech world? Do you advise that I should, move with time, technology time? Because you see everybody around me, they keep jumping from one certification to another, saying, oh, okay, no, it's this Splunk certification I want to get now. This I want to get now. This is what is needed by employers. So do you think I should follow what's needed by employers so I can quickly get a job, especially in the area where I live? Or do you think I should just follow my passion in the security world and, do the Scholarship for Service program and work with the government and all of that? So those are my two questions, the SFS, and then if I should go ahead and just write the exam on Saturday.
Let's talk about the Scholarship for Service part first, because I think it's one that I'm seeing more and more of, and I don't necessarily agree with the philosophy of it directly. A lot of, for those of you not familiar with this way this works out, the things that you would do with it, some organizations are offering to train you with a certain set of skills. Usually this is a series of certifications, but I imagine it can be for a number of different technologies and or formal educations as well. And then once you earn that, you don't pay anything up front, but once you earn that and get a job, then they effectively take a percentage of your job. That's a very common way to do it. This may be a little different in your scenario, Margaret, but that's one of the ways that a lot of places will do it. And then for the next year or 2 years, a portion of your salary goes back to that organization. It's not a bad way to do it if you have no capital up front, you have no way to get that training that you need to earn that particular credential. That's certainly a viable way to do it. But it is financially questionable whether that's a good deal or not. One of the things that I usually will recommend is that we try to break out what these different things are. You've got a set of industry certifications like Security Plus, which should stand on their own. Industry certifications provide you with a particular set of credentials, but they don't replace a formal education. So thinking about getting, a master's degree on top of that is a different type of credential, and it is not comparable to an industry certification because it teaches a different set of things. Also, a practical experience is different than formal education. Practical experience is different than a certification. They don't really replace each other in any way. Each one of those things brings advantages and disadvantages to it, but you really can't combine or compare or contrast those because they are so different in what they do. So going back to this idea that have somebody teach you with this scholarship for service, you get the credentials that you need, you then go to work and start paying them off is something I think a lot of people should look at closely to see financially if it really does make sense, especially when you consider that a lot of these are really just industry certifications they're going to give you that, as you can see by the people we've talked to online in these study groups and on my website, it's not always a situation where people are needing formal education to go through this. A lot of people are self-taught, as it sounds like you with your A+, and being able to step through these things and get them done. Sometimes we don't pass our exams on the first time. I've certainly failed plenty of industry certification exams to say that, but eventually we figure out the details and get through all of those things. As far as taking the exam and where you take it right now, I think for most of us, if you're ready to take the exam today, it might be difficult for you to find an open exam center to be able to do this. The part of this that is crazy that we have to kind of figure out in our minds is we're trying to take these exams at an exam center that practically nobody is at. There's a receptionist. We check in. We're not touching any of these people, so we're not really getting that close to them. We're going into an exam room. Now we are touching a keyboard and using a mouse, but I was doing that another time in the last pandemic, which all of us, I think, on this phone, on this live stream has been through, the H1N1 that came through. We didn't do anything like this, but we also had a large number of deaths associated with that one. So I sort of understand why we don't want to be touching things in the next couple of weeks. We want to flatten out the curve. We don't want to overwhelm our hospitals. I get it. I'm willing to make that sacrifice if we're able to keep all of these systems up and running, as long as in 2 weeks we really look this over and hopefully people can get back to work. But that means over the next couple of weeks, you're not going to be able to take this exam anywhere. People have decided we don't want to take the risk. We're going to participate in this flattening of the curve. We want to make sure that everybody is possibly as safe as possible. So you're just not going to be able to take it. I would recommend you keep reading your book over the next couple of weeks. Keep taking your online exams. Maybe it's an opportunity to do some more labs. Bring up an operating system like the VirtualBox that I just mentioned. Download VirtualBox, download a VM, play around with the virtual systems that are inside of that. It's a great opportunity to make that happen. I think you're going to have a hard time finding somewhere right now. As much as you're ready to go and ready to take that exam, I think it's an opportunity to put it off for 2 weeks, study a little bit more, and you'll just be that much prepared when you walk into the exam, Margaret.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Messer. I actually found a place for Saturday, but, I just wanted your thoughts about it because I was thinking of canceling it with the way this thing is actually getting worse. So you made a point, it's pretty much just someone at the reception and then you're just going into an exam room and then you're just by yourself. So I guess I'll just, just take the risk and just go ahead and get it over with so I can move to the 1002.
Well, for what people are talking about in the chat room and the things that they're saying online, that things are, even as we're going through this process in this live stream, they're even canceling. Some people are saying all testing is postponed. So call your local testing center to confirm this before you ever make these plans. I suspect your local testing center is going to cancel on these things as well. There were some stories on Reddit this morning where people were able to book an exam. They did it online. They got their confirmation. They walked to the exam center, and there was somebody standing outside the exam center saying, "Sorry, we're not doing this today. We're not doing any type of exams." He said, "Well, you didn't email me. You didn't call me." He goes, "Yes, we didn't, but we're not doing this." So just do your double checking. I suspect it's a good time to study some more, Margaret.
Sure.
Best of luck.
Thank you so much, Professor.
I hope you do well with that exam. Good luck.
Thank you so much. I'll keep you updated.
Please do.
Keep you updated. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All righty.
that's one of those when you start getting into the logistics of this, it's going to be hard to find anybody who's open in the next couple of weeks to do this. It's really going to be the bare minimums of what we will need to do as a society. We'll go to the grocery store. We'll go to the things that we have to do. Gas stations will be open, so we can at least transport things around. Our utilities will continue to work. This is not a dire situation. I live in Florida. We have hurricanes that come through every year. We've gone weeks without power, and even longer in some parts of the state where you're just sitting at home with no power, with nothing. There's no water. There's no utilities. There's no anything. It's not as crazy as you might think. This is great. We have power. We have water. I have Xbox. I think we're okay for the next couple of weeks. We're going to do fine, and we'll figure out the details. I think it's a good chance to take a step back and do some more studying. Let's go back to the phone lines. Another 757. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for calling. Which name are you calling from?
Hey, this is Sean. I'm from Jamaica.
Well, thanks for calling. What's your question?
I don't really have a question. Just really like just to say thank you. As a shout out and thank you. A while back, I actually was looking forward to do the plus, but in Jamaica it was really expensive, like really, really expensive just to do the course, not even to do the exam.
Wow.
And then a friend of mine actually,
Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
Yes, sir. It was, yeah, let's try it out. So I went ahead and I looked it up. Said, okay, when I first got on your website, I thought I'd have to pay for it. I'm like, okay, let's see how much it's going to cost. And when I looked through, I saw that everything was free. I was like, okay. And I looked through and wow, like this must be a dream come true. Like everything was free. And you really helped me. And like a lot of things that I thought was like out of the world, like, it's going to be hard. Like you break it down so easily, so simple, so basic. Like most of these things I already knew already. You just kind of go in a little bit detailed with certain things, but a lot of them I already knew. I'm like, wow, I could actually do this. And you really build my confidence to say that, wow, I can actually pass this. And to be honest, you actually put me in a place right now where I can actually look forward to the exam. So I just want to really shout out and just say thank you very much. And I really appreciate all that you're doing for us all out here, because it's not easy, but with determination, it's possible. And with you, I definitely see a light at the end of the tunnel. So just thank you.
I appreciate that. And as I always say, I'm glad I'm able to make the videos. I'm glad I'm able to put them online. But ultimately, you're the one who has to do the hard part. You're the one who has to study. You're the one who has to go take these exams. So congratulations to you as well. And best of luck with your exams.
Definitely. But let me just ask you, like,
sure.
Let's say I'm in Jamaica, right? If I wanted a job like in the States, like an IT front desk, because out here it's not really like all that of big, like a big industry. So like, let's say I should look like an intern or something like that in the States. Like, which companies would you recommend me to look into to possibly apply for? So.
Well, one of the I worked at I lived in Miami for about 10 years. So a lot of the places I worked in Miami, I can tell you the very first insurance company I worked with in the help desk around me, it was me, a white guy from Florida. There was a Russian, someone from Haiti, someone from Jamaica, a Canadian. It's like every single one of us was somebody from somewhere different. It's a great place to go because there are a lot of people there are a lot of communities of people that are from different parts of the world. So there is a Haitian community, there's a Jamaican community, there is a Greek community, there is the Cuban community. There's all these different communities that can help you get started in what you need to do in that particular area, that particular geography of South Florida. So that might be a good one to look at because there's two things going for you there. First, you've got people that you know or friends or family or cousins or at least like-minded people that you're familiar with that can help you traverse the new area that you would find yourself in. But there's also a huge amount of technology in South Florida. Tons of companies, call centers, insurance, healthcare, manufacturing, publishing. There's government. There's just huge amounts of opportunity in South Florida to pull from. If I was in your position trying to figure out where do I go next, it's those big places. Do I go to New York? Do I go to Miami? Where should I go that makes sense, that would get me up and running as quickly as possible? And that might be a good place to look at as well. Whenever you're starting to get working in IT, the type of company doesn't matter as much, because if you start working for a transportation company, their help desk is going to be very similar to a financial company. Their help desk is going to be very similar to a government help desk. So the details of that don't matter as much. What really matters is that you're getting your foot in the door. You get that first help desk job or that first administrator job. And from there, you can build out and go anywhere you want. If you're in a geography like South Florida, I think in South Florida, I worked for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 different companies in that 10-year period I lived down there. Maybe it was 3 companies. So there's plenty of places to hop around to. If one job isn't working out or you grow out of a position, there's another technology company that needs your skills in South Florida. That might be a good thing to look at as well.
Do you have any companies that you would recommend? Like a name of a few companies, like 2 or 3 companies that you think I could look into?
The ones in South Florida that are probably the biggest, and you can Google up a list of the largest companies in Florida, and they will list a number of these in South Florida. There are companies in South Florida that are big. Government is enormous in South Florida. The Dade County Public School System is probably one of the largest public school systems in the country. You've got, of course, the Dade County government itself is very large. Transportation companies, the cruise lines, although they're obviously going to be challenged here over the next number of months. Cruise lines are a huge part of the economy in South Florida. It'll be interesting to see what happens with those, but they have very big help desks associated with them. And healthcare in South Florida, that will probably be number 1 on my list, is look at healthcare companies in South Florida, because they all have computers in every single room in the hospitals. Their hospitals are enormous. They're these huge hospital conglomerates. They have enormous help desks, and they have enormous needs for people. That's probably going to be where the economy is going to be very, very good over the next number of months, is healthcare.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate your assistance, your service, and everything. And you're doing a great job, and just keep it up. Trust me, you're helping a lot out here.
It's great to hear. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Thank you.
That's always something to think about in your area. If you're trying to figure out where do I go, you probably want to go to where that big building is over there. So Google in your area, your particular geographical area probably has a name. The Tri-County area, the New York area, the LA area. What are the biggest companies in your state or in your geographic area? Those are great places to start looking at their website, to start seeing what's listed for open positions on their website, and to just keep an eye on them. Even if you're not ready today to jump into one of those positions, keep an eye on it. See what they're doing. See what they're hiring. See as the help desk positions come and go. Do they always have help desk positions posted on their website? Do they only do it once a year? Do they do it once a month? Are they changing? Are they different positions? What are the requirements? This is good intel. So figure out what it makes sense for that. You'll do just fine. Let's go to 936. Thanks for holding for so long, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Stephanie from Huntsville, Texas.
Hey, Stephanie. What can we do for you?
First off, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of compliments. I just wanted to add to that. Thank you, for the notes. They've been really helpful to me, and the videos, and even the study group replays. What? And I just wanted to ask real fast, do you have any advice or tips on scenario-based questions that, are more based in critical thinking? Because things like ports or connectors or, stuff you memorize have come pretty easy to me, but scenario-based, for instance, identifying parts when something goes wrong, or like a screen goes blank, or a GPU card goes out, or there's a blue screen of death, or, what to do when something goes wrong, those kinds of questions. I guess, I want to, empower myself, with knowledge to figure out, how to solve them.
And you're absolutely right to be going down that line, because the bulk of the exam are questions like that. There are not any trivia questions on the exam. They don't ask you, what port number does SSH use? You don't get a lot of questions like that on the exam. They're not interested at all in giving you an easy softball like that. Instead, they give you these scenarios that Daniel is a network administrator who needs to configure a firewall to allow someone to remotely console into a Linux machine from offsite. What port number should you enable in the firewall to allow this person to do this? That's the question you get on the exam. It's the same question, by the way. It's the same answer that you would get, but two completely different ways to ask it. And they don't directly say this person needs to SSH in. They always say they need to remote terminal to Linux. That's what they're doing, is try to make you go through a couple of steps to get to this final place. So you're absolutely right to think that I need to find questions like this to be able to work through. A lot of the questions that you find online for free are not questions like this. In fact, they're just trivia questions. They're almost like flip card questions that you would find. I mentioned in the pre-show, because somebody asked about it, and I'll do a little self-promotion on this one, is that I am in the final stages of editing my practice exam book for the 1001 test. So I think at this point I can kind of announce that in the next month, my plan is to have that book finally published. That is 3 practice exams, very similar to the practice exam book I did for Security Plus, where there's 3 separate exams. There are 90 questions, 5 questions on each exam, so 15 total questions that are performance-based questions that go a little bit deeper than some of the things that we've done in our study groups. And the questions are designed to emulate the style and the cadence of the ones that you would find on the exam, similar to the one that I just gave, where it's the scenario that they write out, or it's a problem that has occurred, and this is the symptom of the problem. What could this possibly be? And they give you some examples of things you need to choose from. Those types of questions are in this book as well. That's what you're looking for, is a book or a guide or a set of exam sample questions that has that type of approach. And I think if you can find those and work with them, you'll be much better prepared for the exam than just doing the flip cards of a name versus what it stands for. The exam's not going to ask you, what does SSH stand for? They're not going to ask you what does DDR stand for. Those are gimme trivia questions. Instead, they're, like you mentioned, they're really asking you troubleshooting questions. So without having practical experience troubleshooting, how do you prepare yourself? I think finding the right Q&A is going to do that. On my website, I do have some sample books that are out there that might help you along those lines. If you go on my website to the A+ training page, and I've got let me move some of the text off my screen before I blast it on here. But if you go to my website, under each one of the headings at the top for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, there's a study recommendation link at the bottom of each of those pages. And if you click that study recommendation link, I give you 4 things that I recommend. One of them is videos. Well, I promote my videos, but as long as you get some videos that work for you, that I'm fine with that. And my course notes are listed there as well. Good books. You should obviously have a good book there that you're going through. These are textbooks that go into detail about some of the things we talk about in the exam objectives. Lots of Q&A. So there's 2 examples up here. There's the Exam Cram book and the A+ Complete Practice Test book from Cybex. Both of those are very good. I like the David Prowse book for Exam Cram. I think he puts those questions in a way that are very similar to the exam. Those are 2 very good books, though, that I recommend. And then plenty of hands-on. There's some labs there as well. But for the things you're talking about, lots of Q&A. That section 3 is probably one of the more important ones. That's where I would recommend you look at as well for getting that last bit of extra help with performance-based questions and with multiple choice. And don't forget, for those of you not familiar, the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. So go through the last 12 months and you'll get to see at least an idea of what some of these performance-based questions might look like. You may find they're matching questions. They're putting things in a particular order. They're not as hard as you think they're going to be. It's one of those situations where fear of the unknown is a problem there. You may find that these matching questions are a lot of what you find on the exam. And if you run into that, you'll see, oh, these are easy. I can get through these very easily and be able to work through the details of that, Stephanie.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And just, I guess, a quick add-on. I was wondering, past the A+, once, you get into the field, with solving these kinds of problems, in the field, beyond just the questions, would you recommend that I go back and, let's say, like your book that you announced, I have that book, in the future. Would I go back over that to keep, basically the knowledge fresh in my mind, or do people like out in the field, I guess like use Google a lot? Or I guess I'm worried about working on someone else's computer. And I guess a part of me is anxious, but also like just wanting to, I guess, know what to do in certain
I think that's true. I think it's something that you sort of get familiar with, and it almost becomes second nature. I often tell people we're not Googling every time we hop in a car to figure out how to operate our car. And yet it's not a simple process. You have to put the key in, you have to turn it, you have to push the button, however it works in your car. You put it in reverse, you have to do a couple of different things and look here and then look behind you and then put it in reverse. Then you have to put it into drive. And if it's a stick shift, there's a whole bunch of other things going on. Driving a car is not a simple thing, but we don't Google every time we hop in the car how to make it work. It almost becomes second nature to us that if we see that we have to turn left, we know there's a certain muscle memory that kicks in where we turn on the left turn signal, or we should, and then we get to the curve, and then we know how to turn the wheel so that we're traversing the left turn in the proper way. It just becomes very, very normal for us to do it, and it will become very, very normal for you to work on someone's computer that way as well. There will be certain things you see on the screen, certain things that they describe as their problem that in your mind trigger you to think that maybe you should start breaking down the problem in a certain way. Oh, you're describing an issue with the network. Let's see how your network configuration is set up now. I'm going to open up a command prompt. Let's look at your IP config and how it's configured. Oh, I can see some IP addresses. Let's try pinging your default gateway. Let's try pinging the internet. So there's a set of steps that you always will go back to. And after you do them a couple, 3 or 4 times, you will find that it just becomes normal for you to go through that process as well. It's almost, you know exactly where to click. You know exactly what to type in. That's going to be a ramp. That's going to be a growing process in figuring out how to do it once you get there. But I will tell you, as someone who has worked in the industry my whole life at a technical level, as someone who is walking in as the supposed expert in this particular technology and representing certain products that are for sale and people are asking questions of you. My last position, I worked 7 years at a next-gen firewall company as a systems engineer in the field, where I would walk in and I would tell people, you really want to buy this firewall. It is amazing. Look at all these things that it does. And they would ask me questions every day. Hey, does it do this? Hey, our network is set up this way. Can the firewall handle that? And every day, an answer that I gave to customers is, I have no idea. I was extremely familiar with this technology. I've been there forever. I plugged this technology in and implemented it and installed it and modified it and done things with it. But you're always, always, always going to find questions you don't know about. I think that's one of the great things about this industry is there's no possible way that any one person will know everything about everything. And in fact, you'll probably never know everything about even one thing. It just happens to be the way technology is and the way that it operates and all of these different variables that go around doing that. So the answer, of course, is I have no idea, but I do know the people who know the answer to that, and I can ask. And usually when you work in an organization like that, there's a group of people. You hop on the Discord, you hop on the email threads, and you ask, hey, I had a customer ask about this today. Does anybody know about this? And suddenly you get tons of answers. Oh, yeah, I have a customer that does that here in Illinois. I have a customer that did that in California. I had a customer that did that in Europe. And you suddenly get all these conversations back from SEs around the world and technicians around the world to be able to do something, to be able to help you understand how to do that as well. And now you are the one that can work through those pieces. One of the best pieces of advice I think I can give to people is never be afraid to say, I don't know. When I would go to a training class, I would sit in the front. And when they went through something that I didn't know about, I would stop them and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you do that for me again? And very often you will find when you do that, the person next to you go, yeah, I didn't understand what they were saying either. I'm so glad you asked that question. Because everybody's afraid to say they don't know. The best thing you can do for yourself is be that person who is not afraid to say, I don't know. Because you don't. None of us do. Jump in there and have somebody help explain it to you. And as I also mentioned earlier today, you'll often find that when you finally do understand it, it's never as difficult as you thought it was going to be. It's never as dangerous or crazy as you thought it was going to be. Turns out to be very straightforward. And once you know it, and you're better for doing that. That's the way to do it to make things happen, I think, Stephanie.
Awesome, Professor Messer. I absolutely agree that what's great about the tech field is constantly being able to learn new things. And I just want to say, I appreciate everything. And, that was a lot of good info. And I hope you have a good day.
I appreciate the call. Thanks for calling. That's always the best path in my mind to go through. When you are trying to figure something out, you do not want to be in the position where they're saying, has everybody got that? Okay, let's continue. I was never that person. Or at least I became to not be that person. I think in the beginning, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to jump in there. I guess you get to a point where you just don't care what people think about you anymore. That's the part where I finally realized, yeah, I don't care. I don't care that you think I'm an idiot with this one, because I've got to leave this room and go talk to customers. And the only people in the room with the customer is me. So I need to understand as much of this as I possibly can before I walk into the room with the customer. So that was the real driving part on my side to make sure I understood these things. And I think that probably started for me when I got the first job that was more of a field position, that was more of a systems engineer position, where I really, really, really had to understand this in a room with people that were looking to me to know the answers. And you should at least know the basics of what people are learning. The great part about it, though, and I mentioned this in the last call, is you never really stop the learning process. There is always something new. There's always technology that's changing under your feet. Today, we've talked about virtualization. We've talked about internet technologies. We've talked about Internet of Things and Z-Wave. These are technologies that didn't exist 10 years ago, 5 years ago on some of these. Brand new technologies. Nobody in the world has ever seen these technologies before. You are just as familiar with these technologies as I am, because they did not exist prior to them existing a few years ago. So the ramp that we have to understand those is exactly the same for all of us. There are things that I did in my industry 20 years ago that when I started, there was no internet, but there was networking. There was Ethernet, but no internet. So the Ethernet that I learned 20 years ago is effectively the same Ethernet knowledge I need to know today. The TCP that we had 20 years ago, effectively the same TCP we're using today. So some of those things you will use your entire career. Virtualization, cloud computing, you're going to use that your entire career. And whatever comes of that, all the containerization and other technologies that are being built upon that, you will continue to build on as your career goes on. But you're going to find 20 years from now, you're still going to go back to that Ethernet. You're still going to go back to the beginnings of that virtualization and be able to use that technology and knowledge to be able to solve problems that you didn't even know were coming down the line. And that's one of the great things about what we do, I think. That's one of the fun things about what we do. That's one of the reasons I'm in this industry, is because it's always something different. One of the great things I think that we can always rely on. We're always going to need these technologies. We're always going to need these computing technologies and cloud computing technologies. We're in this weird time in the world where we're all sort of sitting in a room and waiting for the time to go by. What a great opportunity to sit back and think about, what do I need to do next? How do I position myself to do that thing next? What tools, what learning materials, what equipment do I need to be able to get to that next step? It's effectively a 2-week buy period. So let's make the most of it and figure out what we want to do and come out of this with a direction, with a knowledge, with ready to go down that path. It may be an opportunity that we didn't even realize we needed. And here it is among us, upon us, and now it's time to take advantage of it. What a great place to go. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for following us with the live stream that we did in the first hour, where I ask you questions. We do the same thing on Thursday. I have questions to ask you from the 221,002 exam. Same A+ exam, but the other one, the other half of the exam series. I've got the questions already written. They're already sitting there waiting for us. All you have to do is come back on Thursday. We'd love to have you here and join us for those questions. And we'll do another after show then as well, where you can follow up and ask questions of that too. Thanks for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.